So, good day, everyone. Julien Benoit again for our last lecture together. After that, Shaw Badenhorst will take over and talk about the evolution of hominins. So, the purpose of this lecture is to transition from the origin of life to hominins, and this will be achieved through the evolution of vertebrates. So today we will talk about great transitions in vertebrate evolution, their origin, how they evolved in water, how they get out of water and conquer the lands, and how they ultimately evolved into primates and humans. So as usual, you can ask questions to this email address between 8 and 3 o'clock every day, or you can send me your questions on the forum at the bottom of this page. I also strongly advise you to download this video as usual, because if you want to watch it again, you will be able to watch it without using without waiting for the loading. And I strongly advise that you take note, just like if you were in class, just to help your learning process. This lecture will include 2 quizzes, and those 2 quizzes are marked. As usual, I will leave you plenty of time to do them. You have until the 15th of May to do these 2 quizzes, so there's no rush. You're supposed to watch this video on the 4th of May, if I'm not mistaken. So if today is the 4th of May, it gives you more than 10 days to complete those quizzes. So you don't have to do them right after the lecture. You don't have to do them. You don't have to rush anything. You can use, as usual, any resources that you want to answer the questions. But those 2 quizzes are very easy, so don't worry too much about that. So now let's start with the origin of fish. The origin of fish, why is it important? Because all that beautiful vertebrate evolution, birds, reptiles, mammals, and modern fish are all descended from an ancestral fish-like animal. So we will have to look deep into deep into the geological time and go back to the Cambrian, Ordovician, Silurian at the beginning of the age of the trilobites to find the origin of vertebrates. These 3 stages, geological stages, are represented in the Cape supergroup in South Africa. So this is where you will find some of the oldest fish in South Africa. So why are fish important to vertebrate evolution? Well, because the earliest vertebrates were fish. 50% of vertebrate diversity is made of fish on that side, because vertebrates originated in water, like most of life on Earth. Remember the invertebrate evolution, we saw the origin of life among cyanobacteria that lived in water. So all life started in water and conquered the land only later, usually during the Devonian. So half of vertebrates are fish, and about 4,000 species are amphibians. So you can see that more than half of vertebrates are dependent to water for their life and reproduction. So only a small part of vertebrates, actually 1/3 of the vertebrates, are completely independent of water. So now let's look at what are vertebrates. Vertebrates are the animals with a backbone. So the backbone is this, what you have in your back that supports your body. And this backbone is made of individual bones that we call vertebrae. So it's written here, vertebrae, hence the word, hence the word vertebrate. So this backbone is made of several of a dozen of vertebrae, and you find a backbone. Not only in humans but also in other mammals like this rabbit, in reptiles, in amphibians, in birds, and in fish. And fish are the most primitive representative of the vertebrates. Also, vertebrates are distinct from invertebrates because instead of having an external skeleton, they have an internal skeleton. So the skeleton is located inside, and the backbone is at the center of it. So the skeleton radiates from the backbone, and it's made of calcium phosphate instead of calcium carbonate for invertebrates. So invertebrates have an external skeleton made of calcium carbonate, at least in most cases, and vertebrates have an internal skeleton made of calcium phosphate. So it's a different chemical. And some of the basal-most vertebrates are the conodonts. So the conodonts have long been known to people, but under the form of microfossils. So these are the microfossils that we used to call conodonts for a long time. So they are little teeth-like, very, very small teeth-like pieces. We call them feeding apparatus. Feeding apparatus, they look like teeth, but they are not teeth, so we call them feeding apparatus. And they are made of calcium phosphate, just like the bones of vertebrates. So that's what makes them closer relatives to vertebrate, because they have those calcium phosphate pieces. But for a long time, we only knew those microscopic pieces, so they were considered microfossils, because you can see that's the top of a pin, and you can fit easily 4 conodonts on the top of this pin. But a very recent discovery made in South Africa, Promisome, in the Ordovician of South Africa, showed us that actually these feeding apparatus were only part of a bigger animal, a bigger fish-like animal. So you have the feeding apparatus here, which is the mouth, where you find those tiny conodonts. Here you have the eyes, and this is the corresponding fossil. So the apparatus is there, the eyes are there, and here you have the rest of the body with the tail at the top here. And this body, this very long body, has the prototype of a backbone that we call the notochord. This notochord is not a backbone because it's not ossified, but it's the prototype of a backbone. So it's almost a vertebrate, it's almost a fish. So that's what's interesting with those conodonts. So in effect, Promisome would have been a very worm-like fish. So like a worm, like an invertebrate, but with some fish characteristics, the calcium phosphate in its mouth and the prototype of a backbone. But it was very worm-like in its outline because it has no fins at all. So it would have swim like a eel. The ecology of the animal, it was probably an open water animal swimming in open water. The mouth, with its mouth open to filter plankton, so to filter small food particles that were in the water. And these animals are found in the Cambrian. So they are part of the Cambrian explosion. So the Cambrian explosion was not only the explosion of diversity in invertebrates, it also included vertebrates. So the first fish are also found in the Cambrian. And what's interesting about conodonts is that you only find those little teeth across the Cambrian to the Triassic. So they are mostly Paleozoic animals with just the last surviving species that made it to the Triassic. So it's a very good stratigraphic marker for the Paleozoic, just like trilobites or just like the orthocerids, for example. And they are heavily used, especially for the Devonian stratigraphy, biostratigraphy. So now that we've seen the origin of fish, let's focus on how did fish conquer land. So how it so happened that fish at some point in their evolution went out of the water and became amphibians and reptiles and mammals. So we are moving up to the Devonian. So we've seen the origin of fish in the Cambrian. We are moving up in the Devonian between minus 420 million years ago and minus 360 million years ago. So the Devonian is commonly known as the age of fish. And right now I should stop and discuss about the very meaning of the word fish, because the British, well, the English talk about fish, but there are a number of things that they call fish that are actually not fish. For example, here you have tuna, and tuna is definitely a fish, okay? But here you have a starfish, which is an echinoderm. Here you have a jellyfish, which is definitely not your typical fish. It doesn't have a backbone. It's actually a close relative of corals. It's a cnidarian. And here you have a crayfish, which is a crustacean. So the only thing that we are going to talk about today that we will consider fish are the proper fish with a backbone. So don't be confused by the English language that use the word fish to designate also some invertebrates. So why is the Devonian called the age of fish? It's because when you look at the diversity of fish through time, you find that in the Devonian, there was a diversity of fish groups. Most of modern fish originated in the Devonian, and some fish that originated in the Cambrian become very diverse during the Devonian. And you can see here, I draw that line here on top of the Devonian. There's really, in time, there's really a before and an after Devonian in the evolution of fish. Before the end of the Devonian, there was a lot of fish, different fish groups, but after the Devonian, there's only few groups that survived. So they become diverse again, of course, these groups, but only a few groups of fish survived after the Devonian. So there were more fish in the Devonian than ever before, and then later after that. So, but today we will only focus on 4 families of fish plus 1. Why 4 families plus 1? Because there are 4 main families of modern fish, and we are going to talk about 1 family of extinct fish. So first, let's start with the 4 families of modern fish. Here they are. The first one is the jawless fish, so fish that do not have a jaw, in which we include the lamprey and the hagfish. They are the only two jawless fish left, but in the past they were more diverse than this. We will talk about that. The second group is the cartilaginous fish that includes sharks and rays and chimera. So the cartilaginous fish, as their name indicates, have a skeleton that is not ossified. So the backbone and all the skeleton are cartilaginous, not osseous. The ray-finned fish get their name from the rays that you can see in their fins. You can see those rays radiating from the base of the fin. So that's where the ray-finned fish get their names. These are your common fish. That's the thing that we call a fish most of the time. So you include the tuna, the salmon, carp, most of the modern fish, and the beach ear. The beach ear is a typically South African fish, and it's one of the most primitive fish that you can possibly find. So if you want to see one, there is one at the biology. There is a small museum next to the biology library. So if you want to see a beach ear, there is an aquarium in the museum and you can see a beach ear. And the last family is the lobe fin fish. So the fish that have lobed fin instead of ray finned. So it's because in addition to the rays, they also have bone in their fins. So we will talk about them. The most famous example is the coelacanths. And that's the group that ultimately gave birth to land-dwelling animals. So first, the jawless fish. So as their name indicates, they don't have a jaw, and instead they have a circular mouth. So they usually live as parasites, scavengers, or in the past, they were also filter feeders, like this one, the these tiny armored jawless fish from the Ordovician and the Devonian. They were flat. Their body was flat, and they were like a vacuum cleaner cleaning the bottom of the sea. So they are filter feeders. They are sea dwellers for most of them, so they live in the sea. They mark a marine environment. And except for the lampreys, some lampreys live in fresh water. And the time span is quite interesting. So they originate in the Ordovician, and they are very diverse until the Devonian, but then after the Devonian, they are almost completely extinct. And we don't find any fossil. We don't find any fossil actually during the Mesozoic and the Cenozoic, but we know that they survived because today we still have the lampreys and the hagfish. So even if we don't have any fossil, we know that they were somewhere. It's just that we don't have any fossil. And interestingly, the oldest relative of the lamprey was found in South Africa very recently. It's Priscomyzon from the Devonian of South Africa. It was found near Grahamstown, and you can see that's the body here with the tail. And here you can see that there is that circular mouth, just like in modern lamprey. So it's very typical of modern fish, that circular, of modern jawless fish, that circular mouth. The second family I told you is the cartilaginous fish, so your sharks and rays. So the first difference with jawless fish is that they do have jaws. So they have a lower jaw, an upper jaw. So their mouth is not circular. It's not just a hole. It's really an upper and a lower jaw that work together to grab food. So, and it may seem quite trivial to talk about how revolutionary it was for fish to evolve a lower jaw, but before that, before the cartilaginous fish evolved, there was no lower jaw. So, and there were only jawless fishes. So in the Ordovician particularly. So, but after the Devonian, after the cartilaginous fish evolved, fish finally had a lower jaw. And these jaws are covered with teeth. Another thing that is pointless if you don't have a jaw is to have teeth. So the teeth evolved along with the lower jaw. And you find a lot of teeth of these cartilaginous fish because they have an intensive dental replacement. You can see that they produce a lot of teeth. They are not like mammals like us who produce only 2 generations of teeth, the milk teeth and the adult teeth. They produce teeth all along their life. So we find a lot of these teeth in the fossil record. And of course, they are called the cartilaginous fish because they have a cartilaginous skeleton. So it's very rare actually to find anything else but teeth because the skeleton is completely soft. It usually decays very quickly. So Antarctilamna from the Devonian of South Africa is one noticeable exception. It's a close relative of sharks that lived in the Devonian of South Africa, and the complete body is preserved. It's beautifully preserved like this, and you can see the reconstruction that is identical to that print of the complete body. So it's very rare to find something as complete as this. The cartilaginous fish usually lives in open waters, but when they are flat, like rays, they are bottom dwellers. And as I said, they originated in the Devonian, like most modern fish families. And one noticeable species, it's actually not from the Devonian, but it's from the Neogene, so it's a very recent one. It lived between 5 and 2 million years ago, and it's Megaselachus megalodon, or more famously known as the megalodon, and it's the largest shark that ever lived. Here you have some teeth that were discovered in KwaZulu-Natal, but we also find those teeth on the Cape Coast. So those teeth are found in most of those coastal basins that you have all around the South African coast. And here you have the reconstruction of the complete mouth of the megalodon, and you can see that it can easily swallow my friend here. So this is one of my friend, and he can easily swallow the complete body of my friend with one chunk. In the Devonian, again, another group of fish originated, and it's the ray fin fish. So the fish with the rays in their fins. So they have translucent fins with rays inside, very, very flexible fins. They also have a jaw, like the cartilaginous fish, but in addition to that, they have a bony skeleton, an osseous skeleton. So the skeleton is not made of cartilage. Which is a more advanced character than compared to cartilaginous fish. So as you've already noticed, our skeleton is bony, it's osseous, and we do have a lower jaw. So we are more closely related to ray fin fish than to sharks. That's a good news. And so those ray fin fish, their ecology, they usually live in the sea. So if you find like I did a bunch of those fish, you can safely say that most of them live in the sea. So we're probably looking at marine deposits. So this is from the Permian of South Africa. You have a bunch of those fish. You don't really have to be a paleontologist to identify them as fish. It's quite obvious what they are. But there are a couple of fish that live in fresh water. So of course, finding a ray fin fish is not a signature of marine deposits. So you need more clues if you want to reconstruct your paleo environment, and you have to use your invertebrates too. So this is a call for you to work on your invertebrates. And this is the +1 family that I wanted to talk about. So I remember I told you there are 4 families of modern fish +1. This is the +1. The +1 is the armored fish, or placoderms. So placoderms means basically derm is the skin and placo is plate. So the skin covered with plates, which means armored fish, basically. So the armored fish lived only between the Silurian and the Devonian, and they were particularly abundant in the Devonian. So they were really the dominant fish of the Devonian. They do have a lower jaw. They have and you can see that their skeleton is osseous. But in addition to everything, they have an armored skull. So this is a very famous example of armored fish from North America, Dunkleosteus. I've put it there because you probably you may have seen it in some documentaries, like the BBC documentaries. But in South Africa, we do have a lot of those armored fish, most particularly Africanaspis. So you can see that just like this one, it has a shell on its head, on its skull is completely covered by an armor. But it has this dorsal fin that is made also of bone that differentiated from the North American species. So it's Africanaspis, and you have Botryolespis africana, also found in the Devonian of South Africa. That's the head. Here you have the eyes, and you have the lateral, you have the fins on the side. So that's a reconstruction of the animal when it was alive. So yeah, and they have a very good stratigraphic marker because they are found between the Silurian and the Devonian. They are mostly predators living in the open sea, but some of them, like Botryolespis, were also bottom dwellers. So they are indicative of a marine environment. And the last family, and the one on which we are going to focus the most, is the lobfin fish. The lobfin fish, the most famous of them being the coelacanths, on which, so this is the coelacanths that you can see here. So you can see it as rays on its fin, but like the ray fin fish. But in addition to that, it also has this lobe here, this muscular lobe, and these muscles are attached to a skeleton. So that's a schematic view of the skeleton in the fin of the coelacanths. And you can see that the bones in the fin of the coelacanths are the same as the bones that you find in modern terrestrial vertebrates like humans and like amphibians. So these bones are the ones that will slowly but eventually transform into the bones of modern vertebrates, modern land-dwelling vertebrates through the millions of years. So the coelacanth, it's a modern species, so it has retained that primitive morphology. That's why people quite often and quite mistakenly refer to the coelacanth as a living fossil. It's because the morphology of its fin is the same as the one that ultimately evolved into the limbs of land-dwelling vertebrates some 300 million years ago. But it doesn't mean that the coelacanths did not evolve. It's just the morphology of its fin remained the same, but the rest of the body evolved. So that's why the that's why those fish are called the lobe-finned fish. It's because of this lobe that you can see here that is supported by this skeletal apparatus that is the same as land-dwelling species. And the coelacanth was famously discovered in 1938 by Courtney Latimer from Cape Town when she was visiting Port Elizabeth. So some fishermen brought back that very weird fish, and she saw it on the market and was able to recognize it as a new species. And she called it the coelacanth. And today it's called Latimeria because of Courtney Latimer. So what's interesting is that in South Africa is the place where we found the modern coelacanths, but it's also the place where you find some of the oldest coelacanths. For example, Serenictis from the Devonian, it is a coelacanth because it has the same characteristic, which is the clover shaped. So the tail is shaped like a clover leaf with 3 leaves at the top of the tail. So 1, 2, 3 lobes. Once again, let's talk about lobes. So there are 3 lobes at the end of the tail, and you find the same thing in Serenictis. So this is one of the oldest coelacanths, and it's from the Devonian of South Africa. And the interesting part about coelacanths, it's not really about their time span because they originate in the Devonian and they are still present today, but it's mostly about their ecology. In the Paleozoic and Mesozoic, they were mostly freshwater species, but in the Cenozoic, they turned into deep sea species. So they transition from freshwater to deep sea during their evolution, which is quite an interesting phenomenon. And probably one of the most important lobe-finned fish ever discovered is Elpistostege. So Elpistostege is not from South Africa, but it's from the Devonian of Canada. And it's a very interesting animal because it shares features with both fish and amphibians. So the fish-like feature is the very long body covered with fish scales. So all those little gray dots here that you can see, they are scales like a fish, and you can see that it has pectoral fins and pelvic fins and a caudal fin like a fish. So you have all the fins that you would expect from a fish, but it differs, and the fins are lobed like in the coelacanths, but it has some amphibian features, and the most important of them being the skull. The skull of the animal is completely flat, like that of a frog or that of a salamander or a newt. So the skull is completely flat. It's almost identical to those of the amphibians that we will see later during this class. It has the eyes on the top, which means that it was living in shallow water and its eyes were bulging above the surface like a crocodile. So it was really an animal that was living in very, very shallow water, even probably temporary ponds that were running dry during the hot season. And you can see here the shoulders. So that animal has shoulders, which means that the shoulder were separated from the skull by a neck. And if you think about fish, their fins are attached directly on their skull. If you look at a fish, let's go back, for example, the coelacanths. The coelacanths, you can see the fin, and the fin is attached directly on the head, like this, but not in Elpistostege. In Elpistostege, you have the fin here, the shoulder here, a gap, which is the neck, and you have the head. And that's typical of land-dwelling vertebrates and amphibians. So these are the three characters that, and also, yeah, there is no fin on the back. If we look back to the coelacanths, you can see there are two fins on the back of the coelacanths. Same thing in Serenictis, but here there is no fins on the back. And if you think about it, we don't have any fin on our back, and we do have a neck with shoulders separated from our skull, so we are very closely related to Elpistostege, much more than we are to the coelacanths. And we are descended actually from something that looked like Elpistostege. And this is the structure of the hand of Elpistostege, and it does even have fingers. So in addition to the rays, Elpistostege also had fingers, which you don't find in the coelacanths. So in every respect, Elpistostege was what we called an intermediate species between fish and amphibians. Sometimes people do refer to it as a missing link. And in South Africa, we also do have some species that are very similar to Elpistostege. They are called Umzansia and Tutusius. So Umzansia refers to the south, if I am not mistaken, and Tutusius refers to Desmond Tutu, the Bishop Desmond Tutu. That species was named after him. So they were discovered 2 years ago in the Devonian of South Africa near Grahamstown. And you can see that Umzansia, for example, here looks very much like Elpistostege, except that here you can see the fingers are very well developed. So the fingers are very well developed, but it still retains a tail at the back of its body. So a fish tail with land-dwelling fingers. And you can see that it was capable of breathing the air outside. So it was capable of breathing outside water. And here you have Tutusius, and Tutusius, on the other hand, was more aquatic, so it was more fish-like than Umzansia. And here you can recognize some elements of the environment, and particularly here the scorpion. Remember, I told you the first scorpion, the first terrestrial scorpion was also found in the Devonian of South Africa. They were living at the same time and in the same place as Tutusius. And here you have Serenictis and Botryolepis, also Botryolepis africana and Serenictis living alongside Tutusius and Umzansia. So for a long time, people thought that that land-dwelling animals, amphibians, or we will refer to them after this slide. We will refer to them as tetrapoda. So those first land-dwelling animals could not have originated on the African continent because the African